Hi, everybody. Good evening. Damon Gonzalez from the Slip Punches Show. Welcome back to the show, man. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We thank you so much for everybody, with joining us today. We had a good show this afternoon. We're looking forward to a great person that's going to be coming live with us any minute. Mike Rodriguez. Mike Rodriguez is a veteran cutman in boxing. He's a good friend, a wonderful guy. So we're definitely gonna enjoy having him on the show any minute. We're gonna chop it up with him, and we should have him on board any second now. Big shout out to all my friends out there and everybody that follows us and supports us. We appreciate you. And again, man, just still trying to have some fun, man. Have some fun with the fighters, with the promoters, with the amateur fighters, with everybody involved in the sport. So it's important to us. It's important to us to just keep on punching and keep the vibes going and just stay motivated and do everything we need to do to just reach out to the boxing world and get some great interviews and listen to some great stories and what have you. So some great stuff happening next couple of weeks, man. This Sunday, don't forget, Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez is going to be a series starting this Sunday evening on ESPN, man. I'm looking forward to that. They kind of did it like in the sense of a 24/7 on HBO, the way HBO used to do their series. So really looking forward to that. It's supposed to be a great series and stuff. So I'm just excited about it. It's a fight that it's a great fight. I'm sure we all can really chop it up and express ourselves what we think about the fight and what have you. But I already said what I said. I'm standing by Teofimo Lopez. I think he's going to be dominating. He's going to shock the world, and it's going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to a great fight. So without further ado, everybody, we want to welcome our guest. Let's welcome Mike Rodriguez to the show.
What's happening? How you guys doing?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. My son even set up some nice lighting for me here because he does some video and some short film stuff. So I'm very grateful. It looks way better in the background here than.
Oh, that's good stuff. And now that you just brought that up, talk about that background. Look at that. That's amazing. What shots are those?
Yeah, I started. I have so many pictures over the years. I have thousands of pictures, but it's hard to go out and get a frame and get a picture developed. So there's an app, and I get the pictures developed, and they're sent right to me. So I kind of have my boxing room set up, and it's kind of nice that I got all these different pictures from different
Nice.
fights. And this is just one wall. I actually have it surrounded, and it's just kind of been a hobby of mine because when you do something like this that we love, it's kind of like you kind of want to capture those moments. When you're young, when you're in your 20s or early 30s, pictures they don't mean as much to you. You start getting a little older and you start getting a little more sentimental and nostalgic about things, and you kind of want to capture, some of those memories. And it's
Sure, sure.
just been kind of a hobby of mine because I've been fortunate enough to work, fights all over the country, all over the world. So that's just kind of my little safe place.
So, Mike, tell the boxing world, when did you start as a cut man? How old were you and what drove you and led you to do that?
It was completely by chance, Damon. It was completely by, I'm not going to say accident. I've been involved in boxing on and off since I was, 10 years old. It's always
Wow.
been a passion of mine. Something I did in addition to other sports. I was a Golden Gloves champion. I even qualified for the 1988 Western Olympic trials. I was in the
Beautiful.
military fighting. I was in the Air Force, but I played other sports growing up. But it was always kind of like that old girlfriend that you always liked in junior high or high school. You always kind of came back to it. Um, my kids got older and they were growing up. I was coaching their baseball teams and their football teams. And a cousin of mine who was training some MMA fighters about maybe 13 years ago, 14 years ago, hits me up and he says, "Hey, Mike, I got a couple of MMA heavyweights can you come up and maybe show them a few things? And I'm like, man, other than watching fights on TV, man, I haven't done anything in a long time. Our sons were the same age. They were young. They're 24 now, so they were probably like 8 or 9. He lived up in Sacramento in Northern Cal. I'm in Southern Cal. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I kind of got the bug. I started training some MMA guys back here in LA. I started working with amateurs, started working with a couple of pros. Things are kind of like going well. Um, but obviously still working at the lower levels. In boxing, man, you're just not going to show up and say, "Hey, I'm here," and everybody's just going to embrace you with open arms. It's boxing, that boxing is just not built that way.
Absolutely.
But because of people that I had known before and kept in contact with, they didn't shut the door on me. I'm a full-time homicide detective in LA, Damon. I'm busy, like any other major city. If you're going to work at that level, you got to dedicate a lot of time. And I just couldn't dedicate the time as a trainer to work at a high level. Now, when I say a high level, I'm thinking of people like Freddie Roach, Robert Garcia, Joel
Yes.
Diaz. I'm thinking of guys here in LA. Henry Ramirez, Danny Zamora. Guys that have people that have worked with
Absolutely.
with world champions. So one day I'm actually at some fights up in Central California in Fresno, and I'm driving home with longtime cutman David Martinez, who ran the La Habra Boxing Club for years. David worked with Miguel Cotto, Shane Mosley,
Yes.
a host of world champions. And I started picking David's brain about being a cutman without even really thinking about being a cutman. When I came home, I said, you know what? Maybe this is a way because of my regular job that I could still work involved in the sport and maybe someday be at a high level. And I just started chipping away, working a lot of lower level stuff, boxing, MMA, begging people, will you let me work your corner? And it just kind of took off. And pretty soon I had a real passion because there was something physical I could do in that ring, not fighting, obviously, but there was something physical that I could do that had an impact on that fight, hopefully
Right.
in a positive way. It just started building, and it's like that when you used to go to the dance with your buddies, and you guys are all standing there waiting for people to dance with you. None of the good-looking girls want to dance with you until when? Until they see you dancing with that good-looking girl, and then more good-looking girls want to dance with you. And I equate that to the fight game as once they see a fighter working with you, it kind of feeds off another thing, and it just kind of built in the last 10, 11 years. I've been very fortunate that now my stable of fighters is about 45 fighters worldwide.
Yes. Hmm.
And my son Andrew, who's very experienced now, works with some of them, and we work sometimes together, and we've even worked against each other. But that's just kind of a representation of everything in the back of my wall of kind of my journey, our journey, and the respect and the humbleness that I have, for the sport of boxing.
Now, Mike, like the movie Star Wars, you have the Jedi's. And what I mean by that, and kind of let me express that,
I already know where you're going. The
you
Mount
think
Rushmore.
about, yes, the Jedi's of the sport, of the cutmen, looking at the late, Chuck Bodak that did
That's
cuts for Ali.
and
You
you
look at the most incredible, Big Al Gavin. You
Ralph
look at
Al
yeah.
Gavin,
th-
De
Then you look
Souza.
at, yeah, Souza, Rafael Garcia. Then of course your colleagues, Jacob Durand, Miguel Diaz from Top Rank. Just all these individuals being a part of that class. Honestly, listen, honestly, you and I been around the sport a long time. Being a part of that class, man, how gratifying is that for you?
I I want to thank you for asking that question, Damon, for two reasons. It's near and dear to my heart because of the amount of respect that I have for the sweet science. Um, During the early stages of the pandemic, I even peeled the onion back a little more and I started doing a lot of research of kind of the people that paved the way before I ever got here and the people that transcended and took being a cut man out of the Stone Ages. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, and kind of.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
glad you've asked me that because I've actually, in my mind, have kind of rehearsed and prepared for that question.
Okay, great.
When I
Great.
think of the greats and some of the ones that you mentioned, and I went back as far as I could, and there's people that were outstanding cutmen that people didn't even realize were cutmen. Guys like Jimmy Glenn and guys like
Yes.
Angelo
Yes.
Dundee was a fabulous cut man. You go back to Ralph Citro and Al Gavin and Joe Souza, and you think of all those guys, and the one thing that I noticed when I read as much information, and because some of them were older, there wasn't a lot of biographical information
Right.
available. Started asking some questions, and the one common denominator that those people that I mentioned, and then I'm going to kind of transition into a more modern era of the Joe Chavezes and the Jacob Stitch Duran and the Indian Willies and the Miguel Diaz and the Carlos Vargases and Danny Milanos and some of kind of my contemporaries, is they all worked. They had the one thing that's kind of my new word for 2020, as shitty of a year as it's been, is championship pedigree. Okay,
Yes.
they all worked with dozens of world champions, and all of them worked close to 100 world title fights. Okay, when you mention those guys, um, and a lot of the time the cut man, the one thing that I've noticed about the cut man is, to the lay person, we're not always going to get a lot of credit. That's not why we're there. But if something goes wrong, man, there's a lot of blame to go around, whether it's justified or not. There's a lot of variables and a lot of factors that go into stopping a cut.
Yes.
But when you think of those names that we've just mentioned, and I hope we're not leaving anybody out, and if we are, somebody correct us. A lot of people, some people know this. Jacob Stitch Duran was one of my boxing coaches in the Air Force. Long before he was ever Stitch, I still call him Jacob. I have tremendous respect for him. Over the course of the last 8 to 10 years, we've kind of reinforced that bond and friendship, and I have tremendous respect for him. He's always one of the first, if he thinks that I did a good job, to send me a message and tell me that. But Stitch was really the one that took being a cut man out of the Stone Ages because he transcended both, when I say a newer sport, MMA and boxing, and kind of made it more mainstream. And but the real reason I have such tremendous respect for Stitch is, in the old days, God bless them, they didn't have to deal with a lot of media and social media. Stitch was really the one that took it out where it's better optics and better practice to be a little bit more sanitary. Some of the old time guys would be chewing on a dirty, bloody swab. And the swab they were going to put on the guy's eye had probably been on their ear or in their mouth. And I think some of the old school feeling is, hey, I'm the cut man. Let me just let everybody know that by putting some dirty swab. Well, we want to be as hygienic as possible. When you look at guys like
Yes.
Carlos Vargas, I respect him tremendously. Former LA City fire captain, paramedic. And when you look at their technique and the way they go about their technique, those are things that I've always modeled myself after. And any compliment I get for my technique, for having a standard operating procedure that more often than not, comes through in the clutch, I owe to guys like that. Miguel Diaz, who has been just a tremendous friend. I was fortunate enough to work with Manny Pacquiao's last fight. Both David Martinez and Miguel Diaz had worked with Pacquiao previously. And in boxing, there can be a lot at any level, there can be a lot of rivalry, there can be a lot of backstabbing. I'm sure Miguel wasn't happy to lose the Pac-Man job, but he told me that he was glad that I got the the job. It was nothing like me lobbying for the job because I don't do that. It was just they wanted to go in another direction, and they asked me to do it. Freddie Roach and Sean Gibbons, and Manny himself, and it just worked out. But I think the one thing that I try to impart to people that I'm mentoring now, my son, is it's kind of fashionable now for people to want to be the cut man. You know what I mean? They got a cute vest. They wear a funny hat. They have self-proclaimed nicknames all over their shirt. I guess I'm more of the old school, and I think of the guys like the guys that we've mentioned, and I just don't think that's not how they were going to. They didn't operate like that, and I try to maintain those standards because somebody asked me one time, "Hey, Mike, how do you get known for being a good cut man?" And I always tell them, work at a championship level when your best is needed and stop cuts and swelling. I don't care what kind of hat or shirt or sunglasses or nickname that you give yourself. When the chips are down, can that corner and that fighter count on you? And that's what
Yes,
you want. And that's what you want to be known for. And that's what I've tried to be known for.
absolutely, Mike. Let's do this. Of course, we're so excited to have you on today, and we thank you so much for taking time out of your time to come on the Slip Punches show. But what a lot of the younger generation we need to educate, of course. And the
Absolutely.
one thing so awesome, it's not just the fighters and the third man in the ring. There is such a key to you being in that fighter's corner. There's such a level of confidence because it's all about the tools of war. It's all
Yes.
about everything that you have, talking from the end snells in the freezer, um, the thousands and thousands of trips to the pharmacies to get bags for ice and Vaseline and stuff. I want you to walk us through because it's not just fight night. This is
No.
something that happens days before. So please kind of expand on that and tell us your ritual.
I'm a homicide detective. I'm a former fighter. I was in the military. I've been a cop for 32 years. I've been very
Congratulations, Mike.
I've been very blessed. I'm a preparation person. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have.
Yes.
I start prepping for fights days before. I go through in my mind, every worst case scenario that there is. And I remember when Francisco Vargas, El Bandido, fought Salido. It wasn't
Yes.
a
Oof.
matter of if Vargas was going to be cut, it was a matter of when, because I had already worked with him for a few years. And I remember I had nightmares before the fight that Vargas gets cut and all my end swells, cut medicines, gauze, swabs, Vaseline is not there. And all I have is some lady at ringside with a cake. And I reach, I grab the frosting of the cake and I try to put it on Vargas's eyes, but it's not working. Those are the night
Nice.
dreams that I have.
Oh, wow.
You're right. I buy a lot of Ziploc baggies. I buy so much Vaseline that the old lady at the farm winked at me last month because she's probably thinking, what does this guy need this much Vaseline for? We're all creatures of habit. We get comfortable. What works for me may not always work for somebody else. I do have a great network of cutmen that I talk to. Stitch, Mike Basil, who works the other guy in the top rank fights. He's the real librarian looking guy with the really big forearms with the glasses. He's a
Oh
great
yeah.
friend of mine. He works with a lot of top guys. Aaron Navarro in Texas. I talk a lot of shop, with my son. And God rest his soul, and I miss him tremendously, man. I miss my buddy Todd Harlib, who will, in a couple of weeks, it'll be 4 years that he passed. I talk to Todd every day, whether I wanted to or not, because he would call me 5, 6 times a day, even if I was busy. He didn't care. But I miss him. I talk to Carlos Vargas a lot. I talk to Miguel, And you talk to the trainers a lot too, because a lot of the trainers have a lot of insight about their fighters. It's just about being prepared, and you see a lot of guys. I never throw shade on anybody, especially publicly, because we have a tough job. But I just see a lot of people, their technique, they've been taught not the right way. There's no one way to do the. There's not just one way to do things correctly. But when I go back and I look about my police training and my homicide training and military training, when somebody's injured, they always tell you about direct pressure, applying direct pressure. And I see a lot of people missing the memo about applying direct pressure, whether it's drying out a wound, whether it's applying medicine, and more importantly, when they're addressing swelling. They don't spend enough time. They get in a hurry because things happen very fast. When they say a minute between rounds, realistically, you probably on your best day, you probably got about 48 seconds. So there's
Right.
that old saying is like, be quick, but don't hurry. And those are just some things that I remind myself leading up to a fight and actually when I'm in a fight, because there's some dog fights where I'm not really watching the fight like the trainer, the media, the commentators. I'm watching it from a totally different perspective.
Yes.
I'm like, we're in a 12-round fight. He's cut really bad. It's the ninth round. Okay, I can maintain this cut for 3 rounds. Or, holy crap, Vargas is cut twice in the second round. Sean Porter's cut, like in the Kell Brook fight, 3 times in the third round. Sergey Lipinets fighting Mikey Garcia or Hirokori Kondo to win the title is cut in the fourth round. And now I have to maintain that cut or cuts or swelling for 8, 9, 10 rounds.
Yes.
And that can make your stomach turn, but it's a matter of not panicking and making things slow down. I'm very proud that when things get really, really tense and start rapidly evolving, things slow down for me, and I'm grateful for that.
Tell you, Mike, we thank you so much for what you do in the sport, because these are some of the things that it's so important to educate the boxing community and put it all out there, and it's
Absolutely.
just a great thing. One thing, me as a boxing person and a writer for all these years, I've always raised my hand when it comes to thinking of voting for people in Hall of Fame and stuff like that. The Cutmans are right there. There's no question about it, no doubt about it. You're part of the history. You're part of a great, great sport that we all love the most. Mike, give a shout out to all your fans. So many people support you and follow you, and it's just a great thing. Kindly do that.
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BoxerRods, BoxerRods. It's one of those things where I love to talk to intelligent boxing people. It's funny that there's just so much hating and backbiting going on. I see people now that they're not work for a promoter or a fighter, but they're more concerned about how much everybody's making, winning and losing. It's like when you watch a Netflix series, I don't watch the new Cobra Kai, which I love. I don't
Mm.
watch and say, God, I wonder how much that actor made, or how much did they lose on production. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the
Right.
moment, because we've seen this year that we can't take anything for granted, Damon. We can't take
Yeah,
anything for granted, and we need
that's
to
right.
appreciate each day that we're here and the people that are around us, and have an impact not just in the people that you know and you love their lives, but other people's lives. And I think a little bit of kindness and a little bit of common ground may benefit us all.
Mike, give a shout out to all your supporters.
Oh man, there's just so many to name, but at the top of the list has to be the like the wild card gym with Freddie and Marie over there, and all the wild card fighters. My buddies John Pullman, all the trainers I work with, Joel Diaz, Stephen Breadman Edwards, Danny Zamora, John Pullman, Henry Ramirez. There's just too many to name, and all the wonderful fighters, the managers, the Frank Espinosas and Joel Diaz that put their faith into me to work with their fighters. Team War Tape, the good people over at Fit Warrior, Fernando Medina, who makes the best the best shirts, sweatpants. Get at FTWR at Fit Warrior. Folks like yourself, you know what I mean, that have opened doors for me. I always look at every friendship as a bridge to cross instead of putting up a wall. You know, you and I have been friends and acquaintances for many years. I've always respected what you do, and it's just about making not just your life better, but making other people's lives better.
We appreciate you, Mike, coming on the show today, and we thank you so, so much. We hope in the near future you come back on the show.
Anytime, man. Everybody just keep punching. Thank you, Damon.
Thank you, Mike. Take care. We thank you, everybody, for tuning in the Slip Punches show. Mr. Mike Rodriguez, what a wonderful, great guy. Oh, man, we are so delighted and so happy to have him join us. And again, it's great for boxing. It's great for everybody to hear the stories, and we're very thankful for it. This is Damon Gonzalez from the Stick Punches Show. Thank you, everybody. Randy Kamish, Hector Gonzalez, Dan Hewitt from the UK and London, just everybody that's tuning in the show. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you tuning in. We thank you. Have a good afternoon and keep on punching.